And we are live on YouTube. And hopefully any second we will also be live on Facebook.
Welcome along, everyone. It's been a while since you've all seen us, but we're certainly here to give you some big news about our anti-spy bill event, and we've got some special guests along on the stream tonight, so we look forward to sharing this all with you.
And
you need to mute your YouTube.
Awesome. Listen, to shut the YouTube window that automatically pops up when you start streaming. Okay, guys, welcome. So we are here to discuss our event on Sunday, which is going to be the 2017 Moment of Truth, or the closest thing to it. So we've dubbed it the anti-spy bill, #anti-spy bill on Twitter and on Facebook. And the idea is that there has been some extremely draconian legislation passed in New Zealand in 2013, 2014, and 2016. We've had the GCSB bill, which passed and retroactively legalized illegal spying on our own citizenry by our own spy agencies. We had the 2014 Countering Foreign Fighters, Terrorist Fighters legislation, which was about revoking the passports of people who are deemed a threat to national security. And we have had the 2016 Security Intelligence Act, which has dramatically increased the powers of the spies in New Zealand. Also, they have instituted something called domestic visual surveillance, which is where they literally covertly film targets inside their domestic dwellings without a warrant. So warrantless spying is something we've seen a lot of in New Zealand. There has been thousands of warrantless data requests made by security services on citizens. So basically they're abdicating entirely from the legal process and just accessing the data that they are getting through a combination of mass surveillance and big data companies. So we are not okay with that. We're also not okay with a lot of the behaviour of the spy cops, as they're known in New Zealand, which are undercover agents of private and state agencies which infiltrate protest movements, or, I mean, they target people even beyond activists. They target educators and anyone who's taking a stand in New Zealand gets targeted for their political opinion, which is unacceptable. They entrap activists and they do all kinds of nasty things. And this phenomenon has been unveiling itself worldwide. So this isn't just a New Zealand issue. It's something that we've seen spread around the world and be perpetuated around the world. So we've decided to take the smartest people in the world about these topics, the people who are the most knowledgeable and the most experienced, and to bring them together in an open forum with the New Zealand public and with the global public, and to draft a citizens-initiated bill to prohibit the immoral and what should be illegal conduct of these agencies, so that we can send a message that this isn't good enough, and that we won't just, the citizenry will not just be the passive victims of these agencies. They ultimately are working for public money, and they should be answerable to the public. Unfortunately, the oversight systems have completely failed us and completely failed the public. And so we need to start writing our own legislation if our lawmakers will not protect us. And if the legislation that they are putting into, are adopting is in fact endangering us, then we need to counter that. So we have been circulating on social media for the last few days promotional materials about this event. And so far, all you've been told is that I'll be there with some special guests. So tonight, we're going to tell you a couple of people that are going to be appearing with me on the panel on Sunday night, because it's pretty exciting news. And I can tell you that there is even more amazing people that are being added to the panel as we speak. So this is just a little taste test. So tonight I have asked to be with us here on the stream. We've got Joe, our tech director, and we've also got Ray from Pirate Parties International, known as PPI, and from Pirate Party Norway.
Hey guys.
So yeah, say hi, Ray.
Hi guys.
Pirate Party International has been an amazing support for us. They've been working with us throughout the year and supporting our campaign. And we are really proud to be aligned with them. They've been a huge help also in organising this event. So, do you guys have anything you want to say before I move on and give some details about Sunday night?
If you don't mind, Susie, I'm stoked, if that's an expression in New Zealand too, to be here and to hear who you or we are bringing on for Sunday's event. And anybody listening should understand that this is the actual event of the year. And I've seen it all in the last few years. And drafting live an anti-spy bill, it has much more to do with the global community than it has to do with only New Zealand. But then New Zealand is a good place to start because atrocities, if that's the right word, and the way that the law has treated the law down at your place is horrendous. I'm Ray. I work with Pirate Parties International. I work as an activist. I work with everything from Amnesty to Anonymous even. And I can't wait to hear you tell us who's going to be on the panel on Sunday. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you so much for being here. It's awesome to have you. Okay, so first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about the schedule for Sunday. So basically the idea is that we're going to have about 90 minutes of speaking time for our panel. And we have the first 100 people that have signed up for the webinar will be in the Zoom and able to interact directly with us, those of us who are on the panel. Also, we have an amazing team of social media volunteers who are moderating the Facebook and the YouTube chat. So we're anticipating thousands of viewers for this event, and they will get to ask us questions on Facebook and YouTube. They will get to interact in that sense there as well. I know Moment of Truth in New Zealand in 2014 had something like 300,000 views ultimately. I don't know that we'll get anywhere near that, but we certainly have some pretty big draw cards coming. So I myself won't be speaking, I'm just going to host it on Sunday. So I'll just be introducing people, giving some background, and then helping everyone to work through the actual drafting of the bill. So after the first 90 minutes of speakers, we're going to go through and we're going to start making amendments to the existing pieces of legislation. So we will highlight the areas that are problematic, we'll discuss those issues, and then we will amend those specific clauses that need to be changed in the legislation. Then we have an amazing piece of legislation that was tabled by the Greens and Senator Ludlam in Australia in 2013, which addresses some of these issues as well. So we will use that as the basis. It has a proper explanatory memorandum and then the bill. We will use that format as the basis for drafting the New Zealand 2017 anti-spy bill. So the actual polishing of that will happen in the subsequent days after the event. And then we intend to circulate that document to major privacy and transparency NGOs and groups, activism groups worldwide, and ask them to formally endorse it and to help us to lobby to get it adopted in as many places as possible. Also, we have another really special initiative is that anti-surveillance and pro-privacy activists from each of the Five Eyes have sent us solidarity messages for Sunday night. So we will get to hear about what is happening in each of the Five Eye countries, what the similarities are with New Zealand in the terms of the conditions, what's been happening historically, what is the situation now, and what efforts there are going on to address this in the future, how we are going to claw our privacy back from these spies. So in terms of the guests, yes, Kim will be there. Absolutely. So this week it was revealed that, yes, absolutely, the NSA were involved in spying on Kim. We did know that from August 2016 from the Haga reporting that the Fullman case, and Tony Fullman was the first of the 88 New Zealanders who were illegally spied on to be named. And sure enough, in his case, the NSA was used against him and not just the GCSB. So this is very much the American spy agencies reaching out across the Pacific and spying on New Zealand citizens directly at the behest of the New Zealand government. And it seems now that there's a lot of conjecture that the GCSB, who've claimed that they did not know that their spy systems were still spying on Kim.com, as if their spy systems were acting autonomously against their will. Well, it appears that that's because the NSA were pulling the strings on those spy systems all along. So Kim will be at the event on Sunday to talk about everything that he and his family have been through in the last few years as a result of this horrific spying, and to tell us a bit more detail about his case and where it's at right now and what we can expect, going forward. Probably the most incredible development that I'm able to publicly tell you about so far is that Barrett Brown is going to be joining us. Barrett Brown is a phenomenal journalist, an independent journalist who was also extensively targeted by the spy agencies in America, and who has written extensively about them. So he was involved in the Stratfor leak, not in the leak itself, but in reporting on it. He was involved in exposing Trapwire, which is the huge surveillance network, real-time surveillance network. And his writing is just amazing. He was persecuted and jailed for years because of the tenacity of his reporting and the quality of his work. But he continued to write while he was in jail. And despite being put in the special housing unit, which is essentially solitary confinement for a protracted period of time, he continued to write, and he was published in The Intercept. And his incredibly comedic and satirical writing won him a National Magazine Award, which is known as the Pulitzer Prize of magazine journalism, while incarcerated, which is just unprecedented. So Barrett is a huge voice in the privacy movement. He's a huge voice in the anti-surveillance movement. And he's someone that has paid an extremely high price for his work and for everything that he has helped to expose and to bring to light. I can tell you that myself and many privacy activists around the world have learned copious amounts of things about state surveillance abuses that we would never, ever have known without Barrett's work. It may have just remained buried in the archives forever had he not fleshed out the information and made it public. So having Barrett speak to New Zealanders for the first time is a really, really big deal. So I will just quickly swap over to his bio and we will see what they have to say about Barrett. Now, somewhere I had the free Barrett one, which is a much better bio, I think, than Wikipedia. No.
Well, for the international audience, Susie, when you say Kim, you really mean Kim.com, right?
Yes, Kim.com.
Yeah, Kim.com.
The founder and visionary of our party, but he will be joining us not in that role, but in the role of someone who can speak firsthand, who has firsthand experience of being targeted by the NSA and by the GCSB. I mean, one of the big issues, I think, is that through mass surveillance, in everything the world has learned about mass surveillance, we know that they're collecting the data. We know that they're storing our data, but people struggle to connect that that's not all that happens. Once they collect and store the data, they don't just sit on it. It's not a passive collection. They take that information, it filters down through the law enforcement agencies who have access to those databases, and they utilize that information and they take action on that information. And a lot of it is not legal action. A lot of it is extrajudicial targeting because of somebody's political associations or their political opinions. And that is a complete and utter violation of human rights and of international law. They are not supposed to be doing that. So for example, and this is how easy it is to get from terrorist to activist. In the Countering Terrorist Fighters Act, they say that they will only, put secret cameras inside someone's house if they're a terrorist. But then the next clause says, or if they're aiding a terrorist. And then terrorist is defined as threat to national security. And then threat to national security is is described as, threat to international partnerships or relationships. So threat to a country that isn't even New Zealand, threat to the economic well-being, threat to, anything. So the definition just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're told like terrorist, and we think like ISIS, like suicide bomber or something like this. But actually, when you follow the trail of the language through the bills, you very soon discover that almost anybody could fit the definition of aiding a terrorist national security. And if national security is any country who we are supporting, it's just absolutely crazy. Totally, so next thing you know, they have justification for thousands of New Zealanders to be subjected to these measures.
Susan, do you mind if I interject?
Go
for it.
I hail from a country, maybe about your size, a little bit longer, but maybe same number of people. And we're actually, the government in Norway, cooperating with the NSA and the US, is actually trying to introduce a bill they call digital border defense. They use these nice little words. Actually, it's spying on every byte that goes in and out of Norway. That means every love letter I write or my neighbor writes, they get to spy on. And we're supposed to trust they don't abuse it. And they tried to introduce it in 2017 when even the bloody Americans have decided that the activities of the NSA are unconstitutional. So the broadening you were talking about that may include many of us, including activists, is actually starting to include all of us, every single Norwegian, every single New Zealander, every single thing we say or feel may be abused, misused against us in the coming years. A change of government that goes, let's say, alt-right, like the bloody Americans, having a Trump in the fallen House of Cards, the White House. Even when a bad change happens, they can use all of that stored information to, I'm sorry, but fuck with all of us if they like. So it's not just Susie or Barrett or Julian or anybody. It is all of us. That's why what you're doing now is so important and so innovative. And I'm happy you got Kim and Barrett on board. I can't wait to see who else will join.
It's going to be absolutely huge. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely huge. And I'm personally really looking forward to it. I mean, in New Zealand, running around being, trying to bring attention to these causes and trying to promote the voices of New Zealanders and reading and studying, the Stratfor leaks and the GI files and the WikiLeaks releases. It never occurred to me in a million years that I would ever be actually meeting Barrett or interviewing Barrett. Actually, to something that people don't probably realize is that tonight Barrett is actually interviewing me about Internet Party and about this event on the station Who, What, Why. It's actually a pre-tape though, so I think the interview won't be released for a week or two. But I never imagined that these things would come to pass. So it's just been taking that step to spread the word and tell people what is going on, that your voice can carry much farther than you realize. And just going back to what Ray's saying about this, the mission creep of these counter-terrorists, whatever they are, organizations, be it private or state agencies. They how do I even start with this? WikiLeaks, classic example, WikiLeaks has 3 million followers. The head of the CIA stands up and says at his first press conference this year that WikiLeaks is the #1 target in the world. Well, if WikiLeaks has 3 million followers, and if the legislation in New Zealand says that you can be aiding and abetting a terrorist by, circulating their information. So what now, 3 million people are aiding and abetting a terrorist organization by following and retweeting WikiLeaks? Like, this is how easy it is. Like, when for you, a normal person who is just spreading information, to be targeted or deemed as being a terrorist or affiliated with a terrorist for no freaking reason, like freedom of the press worldwide, which is not just a US First Amendment issue. It is an international human rights issue. We have the freedom of expression, freedom to communicate, freedom, all of the freedom of association. All of these things are enshrined in international law. But simply for holding an opinion, simply for sharing information, you can be deemed as aiding a terrorist or a terrorist organization. It is total nonsense. And this is the thing I think that offends me the most about them targeting me in New Zealand, is that they knew full well that I was not armed, that I was not a terrorist, that I was never going to hurt anyone. I had no interest in hurting anyone whatsoever. They knew I was a single mum from the suburbs, who just cared about an issue and was passionate about issues and trying to help people. And they still use counterterrorism funding, counterterrorism resources, and counterterrorism laws to target me. And this is what we have to bring to an end. We can't allow regular citizens to be criminalized by agencies that are taking extrajudicial and criminal actions against us. Because even despite all of these things they've legalized in this legislation, a lot of what they do to the targets is not even covered. It's not legal for them to physically harm and sabotage our lives in the ways that they do. It is not. It's completely without any rationale whatsoever. So something I learned today, which was extremely upsetting to me and which I did not know about, is that now children are being targeted in New Zealand. So now the surveillance state has gone beyond, it started with the activists, and then it was activists and journalists, and then it was activists and journalists and researchers and anyone else who had a particular political opinion or a stake in some issue or trying to get some kind of progress to our country. Now it is kids who have skipped class. They now have a database where they are recording the locations and activities of children and teenagers, and then storing that data for all time to come. How can we do that to kids? How can we let kids become the next targets of the surveillance state? Whose business is it, honestly? Who didn't skip a class when they were in school? Who didn't? Except we were fortunate enough when we were kids that, the worst that might happen is a teacher might call our mum or something. But they are actually keeping and storing and recording this data. So when you are 60 or 70, they will still have a database that says that when you were 13, you skipped English class. This is completely ridiculous. They are commercializing spying on our children, and it is unacceptable. So this is yet another issue that we have just added for discussion on Sunday night. So that now even minors are being exposed to the surveillance state, are becoming targets of the surveillance state. Can you imagine growing up as a child having to look over your shoulder to that extent? How damaging that is to an adolescent psyche?
Susie, do you mind? I want to put what you're saying in not a historical context, but almost. For the last 30 years, a lot of activists like you and I, me in a small way, you in a much bigger way, have fought for and won human rights. There have been movements in the US, ending slavery, women's rights, women's right to vote, privacy. Privacy has been written into constitutions around the world. Norway has paragraph 102 that says we have the right to privacy. The last two generations have been really, really lax and have been sitting on their couches buying bloody 52-inch screen TVs for their kids and themselves with their noses in their little tablets and Androids, Now all of that has been eroded away, and they've stolen our human rights. They're almost all gone. And you telling me, and I'm hearing for the first time that even they're going to store data about kids, reminds me of this. If you go 5 years back in my country, similar to that of New Zealand, only we have summer now and you have winter. The coppers, they had to have you suspected of a crime that could at least give you 15 years in jail before they could put a mic in your room. Now they're trying to introduce bills or already listen to everything you do in your room. That's the context. That's what we have lost. And that's what we really need to rise up above. And what you're doing in New Zealand now is not only innovative and brave, it is what we need. And I aim, if I can do anything to try to help you make it a success, the anti-spy bill in New Zealand, and then spread it all over the world, wherever anybody will listen to us, in Pirate Parties International, in the activist world, anywhere. Maybe we'll even try to ask Barrett Brown if we can use his Pursuance project to actually spread this template of an anti-spy bill to the rest of the world. And maybe even we will ask the UN, where the Pirate Parties International, we're now a member of the ECOSOC there, to fund us in spreading a bill that reignites or reinvents or stops eroding the almost disappearance of our human rights, one of which is privacy. And I'm sorry for the rant. It's over now. Thank you, Susie.
No, I really appreciate your input, Ray. It's fantastic to have you on board tonight, and it's great to be able to connect everyone across the planet in this form of thing. And I was just saying on Facebook, appreciate all these viewers that have turned up early or late for us, and it's fantastic to hear your perspective. I think I chose not to share video because I'm still in my pajamas over here, but rocking on, and really appreciate your input. And certainly these erosion of our rights, this is some fundamentals. And essentially these spy bills have bypassed these rights, and they're saying, well, it doesn't matter anymore. It's not something, we just legislate around it. We're saying, yes, you're allowed to do this because you're a spy. And I think it's about time, yes, as we say, we wrote this anti-spy bill to claw back some of those rights and say these are rights that you can't defeat.
What gets me, Joe, is that we never said it's okay for you to do this, you're a spy.
No.
We never said that. They tell us it's okay to do this because we're a spy. We're going to retroactively legalize our illegal activity because we are in charge. Like 80-90% of New Zealand did not want the GCSB bill to pass. It was the most controversial bill in New Zealand history with the exception of the TPPA. Citizens in 20 cities in New Zealand, cities and towns in New Zealand, marched against the GCSB bill.
Yeah.
And government passed it anyway. They shoved it through under urgency. They knew that the people did not want it, and they still pushed it through anyway. They did the same thing with the TPP. We had, the biggest protest actions against TPPA in 30 years in New Zealand, and they still passed special laws specifically so they could fast track and push through that legislation. Even when the US have backed out of TPP, our government is still trying to push it through. So this isn't about us telling them they have special rights because they're spies. This is about them telling us they have special rights. And it is time to pull back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz, because behind that curtain, behind that little Eye of Sauron or whatever it is, like spying apparatus that they have, staring into everyone's bedrooms and everyone's private lives and everyone's kids now, spying on everyone's kids. Behind that curtain is the crime, is the corruption, is the people who fund and arm terrorists. You want to talk about money laundering? You want to talk about the financing of terrorism? That is not happening in our bedrooms. That is happening behind the veil of the spy apparatus. It is governments that are funding terrorism and terrorists and illegal invasions and drug trafficking and money laundering. Real talk, it is governments, not Joe Blogs, transferring $1,000 or $10,000. They're transferring $10 billion, yet they don't seem to find that money. The Pentagon lost how much money? Billions and billions of lost money that the Pentagon cannot account for. How does the money laundering legislation, financing of terrorism legislation, catch the Pentagon losing 40, 60, 80, $100 billion? It doesn't. Yet again, the legislation is being targeted at normal everyday citizens, but it is actually the governments that are involved in the most egregious crimes and the most significant sizable crimes. Please go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I've worked as an activist in a few countries around the world. It's been, everything from the Middle East to the US, in my own country, etc. And the actions that I see from the intel agencies and their much, much more dangerous private contractors that are above everything that's, fly under the flag of transparency, is the equivalent of we're the law, fuck the law. That's what I'm hearing by their actions. Do you, Susie, Joe, or the rest of New Zealand, don't you see that? That's what they're telling us. They're actually doing this. I'm censoring myself.
Yeah. They're essentially saying this is allowed, and you just have to have a read through the legislation and some of the bills, and explicitly allowing these things which are deemed quite illegal, and just whitewashing over them and saying, yeah, that's okay, and it's just not okay.
It is not okay at all. And I think if we have a quick little look at our press release, I will try and wrap this up soon because I know it's really late for you guys. But somewhere here we can have read through the press release. If I can find the window. Okay, hold on. In our press release, we're saying basically that citizens can no longer just passively accept this legislation being inflicted upon us and these conditions being inflicted upon us. We can't just sit there and be told what we're going to put up with. We have to actually show and to prove that we will take action where the government is not acting in our best interest, which is, unfortunately is almost all of the time. So here we go. Let me try and share this for you guys. Okay, this is the international press release that went out yesterday. So
lovingly authorized by myself.
Yeah, I even got the spelling mistakes, Joe.
Yeah. Yes, it was about 3 a.m. I think this came through, and by about 6 a.m. New Zealand time, it was up on the interwebs.
Whoa! Look at there. It says Pirate Parties International down there, doesn't it?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, those guys.
We're affirming that we're part of.
Sure of it.
Okay, can I get a quick word in? Here's why I'm here, partly why I'm here. It's exciting as hell, but on Sunday morning, 2 hours before your big event, I have a board meeting in Pirate Parties International. There I will present a motion to endorse the Internet Party of New Zealand from Pirate Parties International and propose a more formal collaboration. While we wait, until we can formally accept you as a member of Pirate Parties International. And if I'm not wrong, everybody will vote for it. Let's just wait and see. But by the time you start, you'll have that decision.
Yeah. Really
Awesome.
appreciate the
That's
support
great.
from the pirate parties for this event and leading up to it, both technical and people. And it's been great to enjoy your support. And I think we can do great things together. It's going to be even better for some of our international offshoots, some of the international internet parties that have started springing up around the globe. Certainly there's a close alignment between our core values and even some of the additional policies. So I think together we'll be a force to be reckoned with. So it's fantastic to have you on board, Ray, and certainly it'll be looking back at this moment in years to come, I'm sure.
I think it's such a natural partnership. It really is such a natural partnership. You know, the tech know-how and tech experience, the forward thinking about the future and trying to update the system with new ways and really change the structure and change the system. It's not just about participating in the system. I keep getting, oh, well, you know, what if Internet Party doesn't get in? Then it would be a wasted vote. No, actually, you're voting on principle, because the things that we are doing, the new initiatives that we are taking, are being copied by the other parties. When we do these
it's fantastic to see our policies adopted by others, even if we don't get to put them forward. Yeah, it all happens.
Having a voice, our messaging is already impacting the other parties. They try to pretend we don't exist publicly, but privately, they are watching this stream right now. I guarantee you. And they are taking our messages and adopting our messages. And the message to them is, this is why we are standing up and having our voice, because having our voice does impact and make changes for our country, regardless of how many votes we get in an election. It is not all about votes. It is about getting the message out to New Zealand that we need to update our systems. We cannot expect to get different results from the same system. This whole like Coke versus Pepsi electoral politics is how this world got in the situation it is in. In New Zealand, National versus Labour, National versus Labour, National versus Labour has produced the outcomes that we have right now. So the idea that National versus Labour is going to get us anywhere other than it has already got us in the past is ridiculous. We have to do things differently. We have to apply new ideas, and we have innovation to do it. We come up with new ideas every day, every week, and we're not bound by convention. We never say, oh no, we can't do that, because that's not what other political parties do. You know, when I make a statement, I don't think to myself, Andrew Little has resigned, therefore I have to say, Andrew Little, thank you for your contribution. Good luck, Jacinda, because that's what every other party does. No, we speak the truth. We tell you the truth about what is going on, the truth about our opinion, the truth about what we think, and the truth about what we think needs to happen. We are not just going to give you the same PR line that is spun out of every other party in New Zealand. So vote for us or don't vote for us. It doesn't really matter, but hear our message and contribute on the Lumio, contribute your ideas, have a say in the future of your country, have a say in how we're going to change the system and how we're going to get a different outcome from the last election and the last election and the last election and the last election and the last election. It is time to update our democracy.
Totally. Let's update NZ.
And update
New Zealand.
Update the world.
Yes. Update New Zealand and update the world. Can I say good night?
Just Ray, if we could just let people ask questions, if we just give them a few minutes, it would. Usually we have like pretty good interaction with the viewers. So enough of my rants. You guys, if you have any questions about Sunday. Just to be really clear, it's 8 p.m. until 11 p.m. on Sunday night, New Zealand time. And you will see extremely cool people that only the Internet Party in New Zealand can attract to talk about amazing issues that other people are either too scared or too complacent or too complicit to confront. So come and be a part of your democracy. Have a say about your kids being spied on. Have a say about your intimate and private communications being collected. Have a say in pushing back and let's let them feel the fear for once. Rather than us feeling the fear, let them feel the fear for once, that maybe, just maybe, the people will decide what powers they have, not the powers that deciding what powers they have. That would be democracy. That would be real democracy, and that's what we're trying to make happen. So, Blake and Damon, are there any questions on YouTube or Facebook for us? Do you guys have mics on, or are you muted?
They're probably there. Go for it, Blake.
Not. So earlier we just had some positive comments.
Very cool.
King Bowser said cheers and thumbs up. SGSQ, I don't know how to say that. He said you got me. JD Bennett said exactly no reason, just sharing the truth. No lies but the truth.
Love what you're doing, JD said as well.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm still here. I just woke up again.
Snoozing in your robe there. Yeah, it's a bit late for some of us here on the New Zealand campaign team, but it's always a pleasure to see Susie smile, and yours too, Ray. And you won't be seeing mine again because the PJs and all. But it's a fantastic time to join with you all online, and it's been great seeing all the people visiting us.
Cool. So guys, we'll do this again tomorrow afternoon, but a bit earlier on, and we will announce for you some of the other guests that will also be on our panel on Sunday night. Until then, stay safe, take care, and have a good sleep. Haere kite moi, you boys on our campaign team. Go to bed, get a good sleep, and I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Catch you all.
Ka kite anō, New Zealand. Ka kite anō, Aotearoa.
Good night, New Zealand.
Bye.
Thank you, Ray, for joining.
See ya.
It was really cool of you.
Awesome stuff. All right. Goodbye, Facebook.
Bye, YouTube.